Welcome back, YouTube, to the Tailgate Tech Channel. I'm Andy. Today we're going to be talking about what's right for you, a PowerProbe or a voltmeter. Stay tuned, we'll go over the differences. Today we're going to talk about the differences between the PowerProbe and a digital voltmeter, and which one would be right for you. For years in the automotive field, for testing out electronic circuits in a vehicle, a voltmeter or even a test light was the standard. For more advanced applications, an oscilloscope would be used, or some type of special manufacturer, scan tool, diagnostic machine. As the vehicles have evolved, so has the test equipment. PowerProbe came on the scene in about 1991. They came out with what they called the automotive circuit tester. Essentially, the PowerProbe was a voltmeter in the form factor of a test light. This, I'm sure, intrigued many techs, kind of turned some of the automotive testing world upside down with its design. I'm kind of a late adopter to the PowerProbe, and I'm still on the fence if it's my go-to piece for testing electrical circuits in a vehicle or not. I still carry one, been using this for about a year and a half, and I've been happy with it. So today we're going to go over the differences between the PowerProbe and the digital voltmeter, what their features are, and then we're going to go through and compare them kind of side by side with what each one can and cannot do. So starting with the PowerProbe, what its features are, then we'll go through what functions you're able to test with it. So first off, you've got the multi-probe at the end. This is removable or replaceable. So if you damage the tip, you can replace it very easily. Just pulls right out. You could also put other adapters in there. The kit I have did not come with these, but I do have a set of piercing hooks. They're insulated. These are great for working up on our dash, testing like an ignition circuit that may be powered. Just tying it up, little needle comes up through there, pierces through the wire, gives you a nice, safe, insulated connection. Plug it into your PowerProbe. You can actually let it hang by that, and it's not going to come loose. So you can test the circuit while you're cranking the vehicle. There's two nice bright LEDs on the end. These are great for working up under the dash, where you may be working in the dark. Don't necessarily have to have a drop light under there, don't have to have a headlamp on, or a flashlight stuck in your mouth while you're trying to work. Going from the front, we've got two LEDs up here at the top. This LED is green, lights up green when it detects a ground. There's also a little negative indicator right underneath the LED. On this side, we've got a red LED with a positive indicator underneath of it. This one will light up when we're connected to a positive circuit within the vehicle. We've got a full color display, gives us all of our pertinent information right there. Three buttons here. We've got a clear, a mode, and a speaker button. Our rocker switch, which will allow us to do the voltage injection through the multi-probe, and a speaker. PowerProbe comes attached with a 23-foot cable that you connect up to the batteries of the vehicle. Also has this plug-in here. This is for auxiliary ground. So if you're doing something like, say, testing the ECM on a vehicle, and you want to make sure that you've got it grounded properly, or to avoid ground loops going to the ECM, you would connect this up. Comes with a little alligator clip, just slides down in there. Connect that onto your ground, and then you've got a good clean ground path going between your ECM circuit. At the end of the 23-foot cable, there are two clip leads, bigger ones for connecting up to the battery terminals. They are about 12 inches long between the clip leads and the junction point. So what features does the PowerProbe have? We'll start off here though. Currently we're in a voltage mode. This one happens to be volts DC. Indicates it right up there in the corner and right there with the solid line with the three dots underneath of it. We've got a min and a max feature, so if you're trying to test for a voltage drop or maybe even a voltage spike, you can set it up, turn it on, and then that'll allow you to see what your low voltage is or what your high voltage is, depending on how you have it set up. And it'll hold there until you clear it off. From the menu screen, We can press the speaker button to go down, and that'll take us to the next one, which is the feed test. The feed test is for measuring loaded resistance in ohms and displaying voltage drop. Next up, we have AC RMS. This is for AC voltage measurements. This will show you a true RMS averaged AC voltage with a max of 200 volts AC. Next is P to P. This is also AC voltage measurements, but it's displaying peak-to-peak AC voltage. Again, a maximum of 200 volts AC. Next, we've got Hertz, frequency, center. This is for measuring signal frequency. Also displays positive and negative pulse width. Next is fuel injector. This is a specialized test for testing the fuel injectors and injector circuits within the vehicle. Next up is the PPECT. This detects the open circuit signal from the PowerProbe ECT 2000 to assist in locating opens. Next function is the drive test. This supplies a safe voltage for testing computer driver circuits. And then we get back to our volts DC. Once you get to the option that you want to use, just press the mode button and that'll take you to the home screen. And finally we have the rocker switch. The rocker switch will apply battery B+ when pressed in the up position, or battery B- when pressed in the down position. This will only work in the DC mode. On the back side, we have a cover here. Underneath this cover is a circuit breaker and a fuse. Again, field replaceable, 2 Phillips screws, pop that off, you've got it right there. Now, one thing to note with the PowerProbe is it does require an external power source. So it does need to be connected to the vehicle battery. That's the PowerProbe 4. Next up, we've got a digital voltmeter. In this case, it's a Fluke 179 true RMS voltmeter. Again, we'll walk through the different functions on it, and then we'll compare it to the PowerProbe. First off, you've got 4 jacks down here at the bottom. One for voltage positive, your common for your ground. On this side, we would be connecting for low current, anything 400 milliamps or below. And down here we've got the high current side. This would be for 10 amps or less. This one also does allow you to hook a temperature probe to it, plug in through the voltage in the common, and that will allow you, with the specialized Fluke probe, to pick up temperature readings, such as ambient air temperature readings. When we turn to the first setting, which is volts AC, you can see our screen here. It's just a standard LCD screen. It's not color. It's just your standard gray on black. It does have a backlight on it, which is nice if you're working under the hood or at night or something. You don't have to have an extra light to illuminate that. Next function is going to be volts DC, of course, for measuring DC voltage. Next up is millivolts. This would be for measuring voltage below 1 volt. Next up is ohms, for measuring resistance. Then we've got a continuity check. Continuity is going to be a path from point A to point B. This will give you an audible beep. Next up is milliamps. Again, we would use the small port down here that's labeled 400 mA. 400 milliamps or below, we would connect up here, set our meter to that point. Then we've got amperage. This meter will do up to 10 amps. It is fused inside. The fuse is field replaceable. You would move your positive lead to this one in the lower corner that says 10A. Now, we also have some multi-functions around here. You can see the little lettering in yellow next to each one of the symbols. So, starting back here at the 10 amp setting, if we press the yellow button there, it's going to change it from amps AC to amps DC. Same thing with the milliamps. We go from amps AC to amps DC. On the continuity side, we press the button and it's a diode checker. On the ohms, we press that button and it becomes a capacitor checker. Under the millivolts, there's a little temperature gauge. If you plugged your temperature probe into here, set it there, press your button, and it's going to come up and show you your temperature. You can also press where the range button's at, and that'll change it between centigrade and Fahrenheit. Under volts DC, we've got hertz. This would be measuring frequency. In the DC, same thing. Under volts AC, but measuring for AC frequency. We have a minimum and maximum feature on here. So again, we can set it to minimum to check for a voltage drop and find out how low it does go down when that voltage drops off. Or we can set it to maximum, looking for voltage spikes to see if we do get a higher voltage than what's necessary. The range button allows you to change between manual range and auto range. In the manual range mode, you can select down to a lower range to get a more accurate reading. This might not be so important in most automotive applications, but it is handy to have, especially if you're testing on some of the newer circuits that may require a very stable voltage or a very precise voltage. In the auto range mode, it's going to do that automatically, but you may not be able to get that down to get that accurate reading. On the hold mode, when selected, display will hold the reading on the display. In auto hold mode, it will hold the reading on the display until it detects a new stable reading. Then it will beep and display the new reading. This is your standard digital voltmeter. There's many different options of these out there. This just happens to be the one I use. But for the most part, if you get a good one, it's going to have all these common functions on them. Some of the ranges may be a little bit different on them, but they all basically work the same. We've gone over the features of both meters. PowerProbe is capable of doing, and what the digital voltmeter is capable of doing. So let's talk about their differences here and how those might affect you. Starting off with the obvious, the PowerProbe does require an external power source, where a digital multimeter does not. It can be used outside the vehicle, whereas a PowerProbe is going to require a power source. In this case, I have mine hooked up to a benchtop power supply, but that limits me because I do have to have some type of voltage source. So it's not something that, if we do have a low voltage in the vehicle, we couldn't necessarily use the PowerProbe. The PowerProbe does require at least 8 volts to even turn on the display. So if we're below 8 volts, we can't even check the battery on the PowerProbe. Whereas with the standard voltmeter, we're not limited by that. So if that battery's down to, say, like maybe 5 volts or something, we could read it on here, where we couldn't with this because we couldn't even get the PowerProbe to turn on. The PowerProbe is nice that, being that it does connect to the battery, you always have a good path to ground. Whereas with the voltmeter, you've got 2 leads that are going to be hooked up to it, and one of those is going to have to be connected to a ground somewhere. Having to connect up a second ground, you either need to use 2 hands, one for each probe, or you'd have to use some type of alligator clip or clip leads to connect it up to a ground source in the vehicle. Being that it is not connected directly to the battery, you don't know for sure, without testing it first, if you have a good path to ground. With the voltmeter, you do have the option of testing current. That's something the PowerProbe's not even capable of. Testing current can come in very handy, especially if you're looking for parasitic draws, or if you've got an item that might be drawing too much current, or isn't even powering on at all. You can see if there's a load on there when it's not even turned on. That can be a big thing that you'd have to look for in an automotive application. Right there, almost eliminates the PowerProbe. I say almost because not all techs will need to do amperage. Standard resistance measurement's another one. The resistance setting on the voltmeter, we can check things like resistance of a speaker, check a switch to make sure it's making good contact, or looking for breaks in wires. The standard PowerProbe 4 comes in a nice blow-molded case, the 23-foot cable that we talked about earlier, your replaceable tip, an alligator clip for the auxiliary ground, and this pass-through adapter. While the blow-molded case is nice, mine, the clip broke off on it. PowerProbe, if you're listening, be nice to see these with a soft case in the future. The voltmeter, in this case my Fluke 179, came with the meter leads, and temperature probe. I had to purchase separately a soft case for it, for storing it. Now the case isn't necessary, but it does help keep it looking nice and clean, and being that it sits in the bottom of my toolbox in my truck, keeps it from getting beat up too bad. The voltmeter does require a 9-volt battery, easily replaceable with, like we said before, the PowerProbe has no batteries, so it must be powered through whatever you're testing. So it wouldn't even be connected to the vehicle or to an auxiliary power source, and then use your ground clamp somewhere else in the vehicle. There are features that the PowerProbe does not have that the voltmeter does. The PowerProbe is great for working in small spaces. It's very convenient, one-handed operation. Nice bright, full-color LCD screen. The 2 LEDs at the end. It's in a great package. I really like the PowerProbe. Unfortunately, it does not do everything that my voltmeter does, so I do find myself having to pull out my voltmeter every now and again. I do carry both of them with me. I do use both of them pretty much every day. I don't think I could get away with just carrying a PowerProbe with me. I could get away with just carrying my voltmeter with me, but unfortunately, the PowerProbe I couldn't do with on its own. Now, you may be in a different situation than I am, and the PowerProbe may work great for you, and that's all you need. That's for you to decide, not for me to tell you. Hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please leave a comment, like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. And we'll see you in the next video.